What's on the LarryPOST desk today, Ian?
Well, today we're having a look at the LAMY 2000 fountain pen, and specifically we're going to look at how to change the nib. The reason for this particular video is that the LAMY 2000 has its own unique nib in the range. It's a hooded nib, and the process for changing the nib is a little bit different to your traditional LAMY nib or Safari that you might be familiar with. So in front of us is the LAMY 2000 fountain pen in black macaron. I'll just take the lid off. Alright, the first thing you notice is that the nib is different. It's you do have to be more careful with this nib. It's a smaller, more delicate nib. And if you do have any concerns about changing your nib, we'll certainly do that for you here at LarryPOST if you are unable to do it yourself. But hopefully this helps. So first thing to do is to grab the front section of the pen and the barrel in each hand and twist, and you'll see that the pen comes apart. Now if you've got ink in your pen, it might be a good idea to remove the ink before you do this part of the process, otherwise you might find there's a bit of an ink spill. A couple of things to note here. We'll just put the barrel to the side for a moment, and you'll notice that on the end of the feeder section is a little metal ring. Make sure that you keep an eye on that. It will come off, and it's sometimes just a good idea to take it off and put it to one side while you do this job, because if you lose it, your cap won't stay on. So coming back to the nib section, I have the back end of the feeder in one hand, and then the nib I'm going to grab with my index finger and thumb with the other hand and gently push backwards through the feeder section. And you can see that the nib is going into the pen and the feeder has come out the back. Now there's your nib and feed. Now to remove the nib itself, again it's a two-handed process. You can do this with just your bare fingers, or if you have a piece of nib cloth, that can also help in gripping the nib if you're finding that it's a little bit hard to hold on to. We can certainly supply you with nib cloth if that's what you'd like to help you with the process. So grab the feed with one hand, and then with the other hand, index finger and thumb, gently slide the nib off that front section. Oh, there she goes. You'll find it might be a little bit tight, particularly if it's had some ink in it, and or if you haven't used it for a while. But there you are, you'll find the nib section by itself. Nib to one side, new nib. Now the main thing here is to make sure that the rails on the nib are aligned with the guides on the feeder, and gently slide that nib on, making sure, as you can see here, that the rail sections come over the feed. Get that nib all the way to the back of the feed and just make sure it's nice and straight and square. So there we have your new nib on your feed section. Next step is to place the nib and feed back into the pen. Now there's a couple of things to remember here. Firstly, if the small ring that's attached to your front section came off during the process, it's important to put that back on at this point. Now it does have an orientation. There's a small gap you'll see in one side that actually faces upwards, and the up is the top part, or the side which is the top of the curve at the front. So you'll see by placing that on there, there's two little flanges which will align with the cutouts in the front section. So we've got that on. Next step is to carefully slide the nib and feed into the front section. Now here again, because the nib only goes in one way, it's very important that you align the curve, the top of the nib, with the curve that's in the front section there that you can see. So we gently slide those in. Now if it has any resistance at all, it won't be straight. So good tip is just to give a little wiggle side to side, and you'll see that if it's in straight, it'll come through nice and easy. Alright, so the front section is now complete. It's time to put your barrel back on. Just remember, if you haven't put that ring on, do it before you put the barrel on. Screw that up nice and tight. And there we have it. It's the new nib on the LAMY 2000, and you're ready for action. I hope you found this video helpful, and we'll be glad to help you here at LarryPOST.com.au if you have any more questions.